So I'm going to talk about a function in Excel that will be useful to teachers when they're trying to combine data from different pages or lists in Excel. It's the vlookup function. It is used to look up values and return specific values in a vertical list in Excel. There's also an hlookup function which does a horizontal list. You'll be able to figure out how to use that after you do this tutorial on vlookup because they run exactly the same fashion. It's just list orientation. Instead of going through the definitions I have here, what I prefer to do is just show you live how to do it. So let me show you an example. This is my student data from Unit 7, a test they took. As you can see, for each student, they have each question outlined, each portion of the question, how they answered, and the correct answer and the points that they could get, the possible points and the points that they were actually awarded, so you can do test grades. So what I want to do is be able to do some further analysis. I want to say, how did all my ELL students perform on question 2? And I can't do that unless I pull that data into the spreadsheet. Now, as you can see, it would be really painful to go and say, okay, student 1, are they ELL? To go back to my student sheet where I get the main info of their demographics. Say, okay, no, student 1's not ELL, so I'm going to go back and type in no several times. As you can see, this would be a very painful process, and I wouldn't want to do this for each test. So what I can do is I can do a vlookup process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want to take this name that's in this column here. I want to go back to this list. I want you to vertically look in this list for that value, which it would stop here because it matched student 1. And then I want you to return this value. That's what a vlookup is doing. So to format that, and before we even start, I want to talk about the table array, or the table that we are going to do our lookup value from. So this table is my student table, and what I want to do is first I want to make sure that my key that I'm going to be doing the lookup is my first column, because Excel is not going to search the whole sheet for my lookup value. It's always going to look in the first column. That's how they format it. So in this case, we're okay. Our student name is our first column. And then what I want to do is, to make my life easier, is I want to name this table array. So I'm going to select my entire table. I'm going to go to this columns, and I'm going to hit students, or type in students, and hit enter. I've just named this so my lookup value is a little easier, and I'll show you the difference between that in a little bit, but that makes it easy. Just note that the value I'm going to be doing the lookup needs to be the first column in my table array. Now, I could have named this as my table array if I were looking up special ed, for example, which doesn't completely make sense, but that would work. I just need to make sure that the array that I'm selecting, the first column, is where the lookup is performed. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to type equals vlookup. I'm going to select first the lookup value. So this is the sheet in my present sheet that I'm doing the lookup on. So this is what I'm going to be looking up in my list or array. Now, what I could do is just go back to the student sheet and highlight all my columns. It's kind of messy though if I want to do that and hit my whole sheet, or let's say I want to do this. You'll see how messy it looks. So if I wanted to just do this, not as pretty. So instead of toggling back and forth, I can do this and just type students in there. And that's called my table array. That's the second. Now I need to know which column I want to return. So starting with A being 1, or the first column of my table is 1, the second 2, the third 3. I want to return my ELL value. So 1, 2, 3. I want to put a 3 in there. And that's always going to be a number that's greater than or equal to 1. In most cases, you're not going to look up the own value. You would just use that function to say, does it exist in this list, which isn't as pretty. And then the last argument is a range lookup. This is a true-false value. If I select true, it's going to return the closest value without going over. If I put false, it's only going to match an exact value in my lookup. So in this case, I want to match an exact value because I don't want it to return a student name that isn't an exact match, because that won't give me the right demographic data. So I'm going to say false. And when I hit enter, it's going to say no, it did that lookup value for me because we said student 1 was no before. Now I can just do this, double click and copy it down, and it will work perfectly and do my lookup for me. Saved me a lot of time, and it took about 30 seconds to do it. Now, you watch if I want to copy this over to do the same for gifted and just change that column value, I have a problem. The not applicable or didn't find it. And that's because you see when I copy that over, it copies my lookup over. So it's actually looking up this unit 7 text column. So I want to fix that. So I can either fix it by doing v2 and changing it, or what I can do is fix my original column and freeze my column by putting a $sign in front of that b. So I did that. I'm going to copy that down again, and then I'm going to copy it across to all my different indicators. So now you'll see what's pretty and what's nice about this is they're always the next column. So I just need to change my column value for each of these 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so my sheet doesn't get funky. And we want to make this one 7. If I select them all, copy them down, I've just done a quick lookup and I've got my data for analysis. So now what I want you guys to try in your activity is I want you to go and use this answer key sheet. I want you to look up on this primary key value, this being your array. I want you to pull in the CCGPS standard for each question and the keyword using this vlookup function that you've just learned. I want to give one more example. So we used false to do an exact match, but I want to give an example where we would want to use true and do a range. So in this case, let's say if a student spends 30 to 60 minutes tutoring, I'm giving them 1 extra credit point on the test. If they spend 60 to 90 minutes tutoring somebody else, they get 3 minutes. 90 to 120, they get 5 points extra credit. So I don't want to match an exact value because 47 is not in that table. So what I would want to do is do my vlookup. I want to select my B2, comma. I want to go to my extra credit points table, highlight my table. Again, my first column's where it's going to do the lookup. I want to return my second column because I want to return these extra credit points. And I want to type in true now. So it's going to Price is Right rule this and find the closest value without exceeding it. So you'll see for 92 and 115, it returned 5 points. So 92 is between 90 and 120, and 115 is between 90 and 120. Obviously 115 is closer to 120, but again, we don't want to exceed. We don't want 120 to exceed the value, so it goes closest without going over. So you can see how you can use this to do a range lookup in this kind of example. So as I said before, I want you to try to use a vlookup to pull in the standards and keywords for further analysis. And just again to recap, our vlookup function contains first our lookup value. This is the actual value in our original sheet that we are trying to match. The table array is the entire table with the first column being the lookup value in which we're trying to display the value for. So this was our student demographic information. Our column index number is the column number in our table array that we want to return as a value. And our range lookup was a true false. True being find me the closest match without going over. False being find me the exact match. If it doesn't exactly match, return a not applicable or return a null value. So I want you to try to use the vlookup function, and hopefully you'll be able to be successful in that, as we're going to use this data to do a pivot table and do some further analysis on it.